All right, wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar, Using Film Festival Events to Fundraise and Build Community. My name is Candace Gallagher, and I am the Director of Operations and Webinar Coordinator for American Trails. We are also excited, or I guess actually this is our 188th webinar in the American Trails Advancing Trails webinar series, and we are excited to host the trail film for their Trails film for the North America premiere at the International Trail Summit in Reno, Nevada, which is happening in April, just next month. So I'm excited that you guys are all here today and interested in this topic. And attendees of ITS will be able to attend the North America premiere for free. So this free webinar, it's being recorded. It includes real-time closed captioning in English, and it also offers free learning credits. And links for the closed captioning and the learning credit quiz will be in the chat box if you do not already see it there. And attendees will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording, the transcript, the resources slide with the presenter emails, as well as learning credit details within 2 days following the webinar. And we are saving time for attendee questions at the end of the webinar, but of course you are welcome to send your questions at any time during the presentation today via the Q&A icon that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And the presenters will try their best to answer questions in writing if they're able to, otherwise definitely verbally following the webinar. And so I would like to thank our webinar partners that not only include our presenters for today, but also the Bureau of Land Management, the Federal Highway Administration, the U.S. Forest Service, as well as the National Park Service. And I'm excited to introduce our webinar presenters for today. We have Zach Klein, who is Project Director with Trails Film, and we also have Jay Simpson, who's the Festival Director with Trails Film. So I will pass controls over to Zach now to get started.
Hello, thank you, Candace. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, everyone, for taking an hour to be with us. My name is Zach Klein. I reside in Maine. My day job is in grant making. I'm for environmental grant maker in the state of Maine. I also serve on the Maine Trails Coalition and have enjoyed doing so since it started about 4 years ago. This is a unique webinar in that we have this upcoming opportunity to showcase the event, and I know many of you on the call are also planning to be in Reno. And we intend to broaden the subject matter a little bit to advocacy film festivals in general and allow your experience with film festivals that you may have come in contact to influence and understand our content today. We are actually going to begin by sharing a trailer with you, and I'll let Jay introduce himself when he comes on in a few slides. This trailer was developed for our world premiere this past fall. It's about 2 minutes, and it features just enough of a slice of all the types of films that we've been able to gather and aggregate into World Trails Film Festival thus far. Go ahead and play, please. Thank you. Let's go next slide. Okay. This is simply an overview of how we'll spend our time together. I'll start off by giving you some info about Trails Film and the World Trails Film Festival itself, cover advocacy film festivals, cover some of the flow and the expectations and deliverables around hosting. We break it into 4 basic ingredients for you. And then kind of unpack the details. There probably is a space in the middle of our presentation where you might experience some questions coming up and some meaningful questions. We really want to gather those, and please deposit those in the chat. And we plan to have Q&A at the close of the presentation. And then finally, we have some resources for follow-up so that you don't have to worry too much about gathering notes during the webinar. Next slide, please. World Trails Film Festival is created by and for trail-loving communities. We are inspired by nature and culture and want to make an impact on the future of trails and our planet. We are in awe of the human spirit and all that is wild. To all of this, we dedicate our festival. That does say in a word. I'd like to move to the next slide to sort of tell you the story of how we got here. Go next slide, please. So as this slide says, World Trails Film Festival is a project of the World Trails Network. It stems from one of 9 task teams that work in different subject areas and are populated by volunteers from across the World Trails Network. It's folks like you. Some of you may have even contributed to a task team or read newsletters from a task team in the past. My personal story with this, I moved into the global trails advocacy space about 11 years ago and met World Trails Network leadership and folks early in that process. And in 2018, leading into the World Trails Conference, there was a real emphasis on strengthening the task teams and targeting what they were working on. And I was invited to chair the media task team. And I had been in discussion with some folks about the prospect of a film festival. And so as we gathered coming out of that conference into this newly formed task team, we had 8 people from 8 different countries, and we really examined how we would do this in the trails space in a way that could deliver value for the filmmakers themselves, who are, for the most part, grassroots and emerging type filmmakers. So how can we create value for them, value for trails themselves and the organizations that steward and create trails, as well as bring back benefit to World Trails Network and create a market-worthy, sustainable business model for a film festival. And that work was hard. That work was very integrated with a lot of different cultural perspectives and perspectives on how to make network and project work go. But I would say it didn't take us too long to realize that within the media space, we needed this project to fly first. And it serves now as an opportunity to feature other media that is in the trails sector, whether that be books, photography, poetry. So in terms of, if you're having that question about, this is a trails and media team, and this is just a film festival, that's a bit of the backstory. So we spent 2 years developing the concept. We were prepared to deliver it at our conference in 2020, and COVID hit, obviously, so we didn't have that opportunity until just this past September. It required some development, fundraising, some development of just like research and development dollars for this project. And about a year ago, we were able to bring in a first staff member, which is Jay, who's on the call with me. And he's been hard at work since the birth of our website and through all of the operational details that we've now figured out. And we're excited for the North American premiere coming up in a month. This has been a real privilege to work on and a highlight of my volunteer career so far. So with that, I will pass to Jay. Thank you again for being here.
Hi, everyone. As Zach said, I'm Jay Simpson. I'm the festival director for Trails Film, and I started on this project about a year ago. Outside of this, I wear many different hats, from working as a National Geographic explorer and spending my time thinking about trail advocacy, wildlife conservation, and land conservation. I co-authored a guidebook with a friend of mine, Henry Fletcher, who is also in the World Trails Network, on the Westfjord regions of Iceland. So this project for me is a fantastic intersection of both storytelling, trails, and public engagement. So today's webinar, we really hope to discuss Trails Film, but also more broadly, why do this work and how to get started. And that brings me to what we are calling advocacy film festivals. And I believe we have a poll question ready to ask how familiar our audience today is. Oh, first off, to get to know you, does your job description include any of the following between fundraising, marketing, communications, or other? And you can chat those other responses into the Q&A. We're trying to understand what you all are bringing into this webinar so that we can adjust and focus our question time towards those answers later. So this will last for about 60 seconds. Another question that we have is how familiar, looking at this
Sorry, I'll just
breakdown.
share those results real quick so the
Thank
attendees can
you.
see them, of course.
So we have a lot of people coming in with communications, and then we add marketing and fundraising. Candace, are you able
Right.
to see what responses have come in for the Q&A of other roles? I see board member with other duties, conference and event planning, so certainly related to this. The film office for Washington State, welcome. Glad you're here. So again, in the Q&A space, I'd like to see what film festivals come to mind when we say advocacy film festival. That could be related to trails or the outside, adventure, nature more broadly, or any other advocacy film festival. What kind of brands of these festivals come to mind, and what might they be advocating for? Because there certainly are a number of them. That was one of the early steps in research that Zach and I did, was trying to identify the many different film festivals operating in our neighborhood. So maybe some of these names will look familiar. Between Mountain Film, the Banff Center Mountain Film Festival, Jackson Wild, the DC Environmental Film Fest. All of these festivals operate in a space that I consider an advocacy film festival, which does not mean they may not brand themselves that way, but as many of us who work or spend time in or are concerned about our environment, these events tend to lean towards educating about critical issues, about bringing together audiences to raise awareness about what's going on and maybe help lead to change. And so we at Trails Film really wanted to situate ourselves within this space of being able to draw in audiences and be able to help organizations working to make changes for trails. These are some of these core benefits that we identified with advocacy film festivals. The first point, community building and engagement. I really consider this of, you may have people subscribe to your newsletter, but how are you getting them to show up in person for something? You may have regular meetings, but how can you deepen those connections and social bonds inside your community? So really spending time building and developing and strengthening those relationships with people that you have in your community. As I mentioned before, education and being able to learn about critical issues that need more awareness. Public promotion. How are you getting more people to know about your organization or to know about these issues, to be able to bring more people into the room so that they can be engaged? Film festivals are a really exciting way to attract new audiences into this space. And then lastly, one of these core benefits that we have found is this is an opportunity to raise funds for work related to nature conservation and trails, and to develop business partnerships so that you're able to tap into those businesses, government offices, or others in your community to really be able to meet your broader goals. As we work at Trails Film in this hybrid space, somewhere between doing advocacy work in a more traditional sense and film festivals, we wanted to spend a moment in trying to understand why filmmakers participate in film festivals. Number one, people want to be able to share their work and get it in front of audiences. They love seeing theater rooms or large screens with their work on it. They've spent a lot of time, and we are a great venue for being able to share their work. In addition, awards and prizes are frequently granted out by film festivals, and that cash or recognition can help further the careers of filmmakers. Some film festivals are able to provide screening fees for the films that they screen. Others are not. As a new film festival, we're able to award cash prizes, but we're unable at this point to provide screening fees to every film at every time. But that is something that we're looking to be able to continue to change and develop as we grow. Many film festivals struggle with trying to change from a traditional model that does not award screening fees into the recognition of the work that's required to bring in more fees for filmmakers. As I said before, filmmakers love showing their work, but they also love the interactions if they're able to show up and directly speak with audiences. Additionally, if they've created a film all about a cause that they are concerned with, this is a great venue to be able to gather more support for that cause, to advocate for trail accessibility, to advocate for mental health. Whatever it is, this is a great space for that. And film festivals, especially programs like Jackson Wild, are now expanding to include things like fellowships and ways to support new projects from happening. So Trails Film, again, we're looking into how can we help more trail stories be told, not just once they're created, but how can we support the artists that are making this possible? Throughout the year, there's many ways that audiences, the general public, are able to engage with film festival content. From worldwide premieres, so when we bring in new films, we'll have a big flagship event and be able to show it off on the big screen and have a global premiere. We'll also have regional premieres like this North American premiere coming up in April. There's on-tour screenings where organizations, universities, community groups can apply to screen an on-tour screening and bring a program into their community space or to host their own events. That is a great way to get films really all over the world. Virtual events has become a large component of film festivals over the last few years with COVID. The general public is also able to engage with film festivals by voting in audience choice awards and being able to provide feedback. And lastly, the general public can turn into volunteers. And there's many roles for people to get involved, like joining a screening committee or helping with tickets at an event for the public to be able to engage with film festivals. Now, returning back to, the questions that we're thinking about with advocacy film festivals, why do all the work to go through and host an event? Through the work that we've been developing with host locations around the world, these are the main themes that we're seeing as benefits for hosts. Like I said, community building and engagement, deepening the bonds within group, education and public promotion of an organization's work, and also fundraising and being able to develop business relationships with sponsors and other organizations in their community. That's a lot. So we recommend that when you're considering making an event, pick one primary focus. All of these other goals are likely to be hit as you work towards this event. But this is a lot to take in all at once. And when you need to make decisions about your venue or about what program and how you design your program for your festival event, picking one of these goals can really help focus your intent and drive decisions when you're making difficult choices. So we recommend picking one goal out of the many benefits to hosting to be able to act as your primary goal. These four community or four ingredients we've also discussed as core benefits or things to consider in preparing for your event. So your audience, who's showing up to this? And there's a lot of text on screen at the moment. And if you see something that's driving a conversation for yourself now, you may want to go ahead and add that to the Q&A. And we'll try to monitor this as we go, but also be able to save these questions for the end of our Q&A. When you're planning an event, starting with the people that you know who are going to show up. These are the folks that you're going to count on to be there and to help bring their family, their friends, and their network. Try to think of that known audience as you imagine your event. What special needs or accessibility requirements should you consider? There's a lot of ways that we need to configure both the physical space, but also maybe virtual space or languages when you're thinking of your audience. How are you reaching your known audience or new audiences with advertising and marketing? What channels are you utilizing beforehand? Is this an event for your organization's members that have already contributed? Or is this something that you're fundraising so that you can develop a further project? So deciding in ticketing, if you're going to ask for a ticketing fee to help cover event costs, or if this is something that you're going to provide free of service to your audience members. And what kind of stories do you think your audience is going to resonate with? How do you want them to connect to the program that you're creating? All of these questions and considerations are things that are the first step, I believe, in trying to really identify what's going into creating this film festival event. And if you have a planning committee that you're going to work with, we've created these questions and we'll provide them as a worksheet so that you may be able to get together around a table and discuss these points amongst yourselves to drive that decision-making process.
Would you like me to come in, Jay?
Sure.
Okay. So on the audience pricing that we've developed, we have some details coming in later slides, but I'd just like to note here that we've built the pricing and like the model of what we can offer for as few as 50 people and up to 2,000 people based on the theater. Can you go to the next slide, please? Perfect segue. Our next slide is about the location for a potential event. Can we go next slide? Thank you. Okay, so these prompts here are about what is in your community already. Are there beloved theaters? Do you have a partnership with the local Parks and Recreation Department where an outdoor screening could be a possibility? In the development of our festival, we partnered with the Maine Outdoor Film Festival, and they specialize in outdoor screenings. We've purchased and tested outdoor screening equipment, so we're a good resource to specify what might be needed if that's the angle you like to take. Or for instance, we're talking with a host right now who's at a university and just looking at, you know, an 80-person size classroom kind of event. So there's different ways to get the conversation going and use the filmmaker content to do so. Thinking about how many people fit in the venue determines your audience size, what restrictions are in place in terms of permitting and advance time needed for your venues. Sometimes you may, based on your agency, be able to provide a venue space in kind. And finally, I think the question of, this is probably the most fundamental question, is just the physical presence that you'll have there in terms of equipment and the staff and roles that'll get played at that particular location. But a key ingredient for sure. Let's go to slide 16, please. Okay. This is probably the most enjoyable, like, of these ingredients. I think the one that gets people most excited. So this can stem, as I mentioned, from as little as an hour in a small venue to a multi-night series. We have more than enough hours of film to fill out multiple nights or seasonal events if you're looking at doing that. There's opportunity to build in all kinds of messages to the audience that you expect to gather, whether that's direct fundraising that night for your cause, whether it's education about the program opportunities that you have coming up in the community, or whether it's a stage to host you know, a short panel or a Q&A with the audience for half an hour. Those things weave in well once the juices are flowing from experiencing some content from around the world. Partners can take, I think it's also important to point out here, this promotion from partners. That's a space to invite their voices into the theater space, into the audience space. And that is also, if you're excited about this event but intimidated by emceeing or speaking publicly in that way, it can be a good way to put other voices forward who can appreciate the stage even more than yourself. And so identifying who the primary voices are for the event is key. And then if you have been to film festivals, one of the cultural norms in film and the grassroots film festivals and the type that we shared There's a lot of raffles of gear often, and sort of tossing gear out into the audience. So there is a lot of fun to be had both in the pregame of the festival in terms of beverages and refreshments, and then creating a break within, a longer 2 to 3 hour program. Okay, next slide, and I'll pass it back to Jay.
So our fourth key ingredient that we are encouraging people to consider as they think about how to maybe run these events or how to create a new event is, I've seen that no one is truly ready to run something like this alone. You need to rely on the people, whether it's within your organization or outside, to be able to pull these off. So partners is probably one of the most critical things to consider as you're thinking about these events. What existing partners will you need to make this happen? This can be a bonding experience to pull together organizations working in a similar space, but it's also a great way to invite new people to the table. So what new partnerships could you create by leveraging this event to create something? Especially exciting to think across your industry to other corners that you may not typically interact with. So our next point has think across your community, small and large. From the smallest groups nearby, how can you invite them and make sure that they feel welcome or valued to participate or helping and execute your event, to the largest organizations, government offices, or anything that could also potentially find value in partnering with you for this event, for showing up. And sometimes that means cash. Can you apply to one of those large companies for sponsorship? Or how could you use in-kind support and volunteer help from these organizations to be able to make this event possible and to be able to really provide value to your community and to the audience? Always worth considering is media and communications. So as you're doing what you're doing and you're trying to entice audiences, how are you getting the word out? How are you documenting the festival event and what you're doing so that it can be folded back into a benefit?
Thank you, Jay.
So,
And I think we're going to pause for a pair of polls to go out to the audience.
sure.
And you will have to scroll down to see both questions.
So on a scale from 1 to 10, what is your experience level attending film festivals? And then again, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your experience level hosting film festivals? So we're saying 1 would be the least experience and 10 would be the most experience.
It's been interesting. I have colleagues that I work with that are very into trails, and I assume they've been to at least some of the film festivals, and sometimes I bring it up, what we're working on. They're like, what are you working on? Explain this. And they're like, I've never been to anything like that. What a spread. This is an interesting spread. Thank you for responding. Wow. Okay.
So I saw one of my takeaways, number 1, for the second question, as the experience level in hosting these events. We may have experience for other types of events. This can probably widely apply beyond that, but specifically film festival events, having these special considerations for what does it mean to pull off between your location, your audience, your partners, and what was my third? Program, of course. So over the last year, it was about a year ago that we wrapped up our open call for films for our 2022 Film Festival in Skiathos, Greece. From that, I think we had over 35 countries represented within submissions, and we accepted 41 films, which created over 20 hours of video content to be able to screen within our official selection for Trails Film. We have what makes a film a Trails Film, a selection. And these two sentences about Trails really help speak to what we're looking for. Trails weave through our lives in many ways, from spiritual pathways to recreational or everyday transit. They are political, transformational, connect us to nature, reveal history, fight climate change, bring healing, and bridge communities. So the first thing that we're looking for is that the stories are compelling, that we have to hook the audience. We want to be able to move a wide range of people all over the world, the various audiences that we're thinking about. We want to be able to hook them with the story. And that could be a documentary, it could be a narrative film, it could be animated, it could be a short film. We now accept films as short as under a minute to full feature-length films. The longest film, I think, was nearly 2.5 hours long. We want to have films that showcase the story of a trail, so that we can see the trail that's so frequently left invisible, and the other films that are just an adventure race or just about, trail running, where the trail itself is almost invisible. What we're actually looking for are stories that help bring that story of the trail to light. And across film after film after film, when we program these festivals, you're able to really see trails as a subject within, just like any other character. We look for films that feature trail users, whether that's someone who's on a journey of their own, on a trail, a pilgrimage, or especially trail builders, people working to maintain trails. We're looking for those many different ways that trails touch our lives and that we can relate to them. And we look for stories that add variety and inclusive to all communities that are able to interact with trails, and to help diversify the media and the stories that we're able to share about trails.
May I add something, Jay?
Sure.
I also just wanted to make clear that we accept fiction and nonfiction pieces. We have an animated piece that was selected into this collection. In our film festival portal, we have pieces as short as 60 seconds, and as Jay mentioned, as long as 2.5 hours. And then just a short snapshot from Greece. So in Greece, we premiered 8 different pieces in several different languages. And that full variety that I mentioned was represented in terms of narrative or documentary type pieces. And in the following 2 days, I was lucky to talk with about 50 audience members. And what struck me the most was that of the 8 films we showed, at least 3 people raised their hand and said that was my favorite film for each of the 8 films. So the degree of taste and preference based on your culture and your lived experience really showed up in that room, and it was felt like we were on a good track of being in touch with the audience and learning more about what actually resonates. So a cross section of pieces matches up differently for different folks with different orientations to trails. So that variety and the diversity of trails represented in our programs is important to us. as well as revealing where the common ground is and what the common universal human experiences of the infrastructure we call trails turns out to be when you're looking at it across cultures and presenting it across cultures. Thanks.
So we at Trails Film, we've taken the collection of films that we have. We also have a current call for entries on our website. So if you know of new films, please send people to our website, trails.film. And that way they can enter into our new lineups. But our current programs are wide and varied between women in trails, trail makers, trails in art, disability and access, trail running, mental health, biking, water, and there's going to be more. We really were surprised and astounded at how many different themes that we could see tying across multiple films. And this wasn't something that we planned to create these programs in advance, but looking at the wide diversity within the films that we had, these are some of the starting collections that we've been able to pull together. And to be able to make time for Q&A, I want to remind people that you can add your questions now so that Candace can help keep them organized for the end of our presentation. But we have some details that we're able to share about Trails Film more specifically. That includes pricing, what's included, and what would add-ons look like, discounts, and some resources for your further use. So our pricing model largely starts with the audience size, dependent on the venue capacity, multiplied by the runtime of the program. So how many films total that up, you create a runtime of the film program, and that's what we start with as a programming fee. So that's being able to cover the program rights. And as I mentioned before, hopefully we're going to be able to use some of these programming fees to be able to pay back to filmmakers when we screen their films. That provides for all the work to deliver the media assets with still photos, descriptions, video files, everything that's needed. Additional things that would be add-ons are if you need technology to be able to screen it. If you're looking to do an outdoor venue with a giant screen, you may need to rent those things. So those things would be in addition to that programming fee. It's not included. Thinking about ticketing, we have English language subtitles for all of the films, but if you'd like to screen with an additional language of subtitle, having that translation process and the subtitles applied to the film would be an addition. We offer discounts to be able to try to increase the accessibility of hosting these events. Nonprofits are able to have a 50% discount. Additionally, we discount based off of the geography of these screening events that happen all over the world. So as an example, I've selected a random assortment of country names to show how these kind of distributions work, so that if you are wanting to host an event in South Africa, we're able to offer a discount to our programming fee. Also, we try to extend that to all other associated costs that we work with host on, so that these percentages can really help make these events more accessible to other parts of the world. We've covered a lot in this, especially with the 4 key ingredients, the things that we talked about between audience, location, program, and partners. Those questions and points of reflection, I've created a worksheet. And so this link will be shared with everyone at the end of the session. But like I said previously, it's designed to be able to print it out, get around the table with others who are going to be thinking about this event with you, and start answering those questions and taking notes to see everything that comes up from those discussion points. Additionally, we have a host page on our website that's going to continue to get more and more information about hosting and what all the details look like for hosting. There's a calculator to help estimate the starting programming price using our price and location model. There's also a link for our event programs. So as we described earlier, the many different kind of playlists of films that we currently offer. And we have an inquiry form so that if you've done the work to get started on an event and you think you have your location and your dates picked and you've kind of made some decisions on what type of event you want to have, go ahead and send us an inquiry so that we can get back to you and start that dialogue of helping this event come to life. We are currently preparing screenings all over the world. So this is an open opportunity for people to get involved and be able to host events, like we said, to build community, to educate, promote their work, and more. Lastly, as I mentioned, we have an open call for films. If you've seen a good film and you want to recommend it, you can always contact us on social media or email. That's info@trails.film. I'm always happy to receive emails with recommendations for films to then reach out to those filmmakers to encourage them to apply or kind of discuss being able to add them to our collection. And we have finally arrived to our question and answer portion. So we can take a moment and get ourselves organized. Please submit your questions so that we can prepare to kind of try to cover as much as we can.
Great. Thank you so much, Jay and Zach. Really great information. And I know the biggest question I'm assuming from many of our attendees is the pricing. And I think you guys laid it out really great. And I think it'll be super helpful. So, if anyone still has questions, definitely feel free to submit them via the questions box. We'll ask as many as we can during the live webinar. And of course, you can reach out to the presenters on your own. Their emails are on the screen, and they'll also be included in my follow-up email that I will share with everyone. So I will go ahead and get started. We don't have a lot of questions right now, so I definitely invite you to share your questions since we have about 10 minutes. Kat, though, has a question and a note. She notices that you don't list any Native American film festivals. And so she's just wondering, have you considered partnering with Native American groups?
We are currently looking at partnering in South America. We have a potential event coming up in September there. So I'm happy to say I like the suggestion of partnering with especially Native American festivals that are already happening. Sometimes that looks as like programmers, people who accept films can contact each other across festivals and ask for recommendations. So I'm certainly going to make note of these to be able to see if these festivals have recommendations, but also there's collaborations where festivals can kind of cross-program and share films between each other directly.
Great, thank you. And I believe, because this was asked about 10 or so minutes ago, Justice, what would be the first step in planning a film festival in a small community? And I see that Zach had posted the link, which I think is also the place to go, trails.film/host. But please clarify, where should they start?
I think starting here today with us, it was the best possible move, just to get to know who you'd be working with and where we come from. The link that I think is about to be shared out is just trails.film/host under our hosting page. And for those of you curious about the pricing, we have a totally transparent live calculator on there. So if you tell us where you're coming, where you're at, how many people you think are coming, whether you're nonprofit, it'll spit out a number for you that we work forward from that number.
That's awesome. That's really a great tool. Allegra is
And
wondering, oh,
and
go ahead,
I
Jay, I'm
kind of want
sorry.
to just add with the thinking of small communities, again, knowing your audience is always going to be best. And if you're in a small community, that may mean you have more of a knowledge about your working community, which is a great asset when planning these events. So again, just starting with who do you want to have showing up? And then going from there, well, what location can house you? What does that mean to work within these locations? What partners are going to make it possible? And then what program considerations overall is going to help make that all come together. But I always recommend think really concretely about who do you want to have in the room and how they're going to get there. And those starting points can really help lead you in the direction to planning your event.
Excellent. Allegra is wondering, what if they want to create an annual event? How far in advance can you reserve time? Discount for multiple years?
We have not considered that. That's a great question to receive. Yes, I think we'd be receptive to. I was having a conversation with a host in Asheville, North Carolina, and a similar question came up about if we did a series, can we look at how to make that most cost effective? And my answer then and my answer now is yes. So we don't have a operating date after which we can't book. That is not our issue. So I would believe, Jay, that as far out as they're willing to put it on the calendar, we're also willing to plan from that place.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of clue into we tend to work in annual cycles in many ways, where we're currently looking at, we had a festival last September in Skiathos, Greece, where we had a global premiere. This fall, upcoming in September or so, we're looking to have another global festival where we'll have new films premiere. So every year as we bring in new films, you can kind of find yourself into that cadence of when you want to create your events. And the way we've currently been approaching this is securing this year's events with many people. And then we're certainly open to repeating that process the following year. That's just something that we haven't been, we're into our second renewed call in this kind of new era for Trails Film. There is a question I saw from another person asking, what does that open call look like? I'll go ahead and go right into that. We are contacted by filmmakers asking questions or suggesting their films directly via email. We also use web platforms, mainly a platform called Film Freeway, which is a space where filmmakers provide information on their films and can submit to multiple film festivals through that website. And we as a film festival can create a profile and also provide all the information for what does it mean to submit your film to our festival. So it's like dating, really, where everyone creates a profile and is able to have filmmakers send their films to us so that we can add them to our considerations. There are submission fees for many films. Again, we offer discounts to filmmakers who ask for them, depending on their circumstances. And we use those fees to really try to fold that back into the community as part of our cash prizes to filmmakers. But every film that's submitted gets reviewed. And then from our selection or screening committee, we take that feedback and form our selections as to which ones we'll formally accept, and then have those as films available to create the programs.
That might be worth noting. That's an ongoing volunteer opportunity. We have a growing body of people from around the world that serve in the screening committee, and many hands make light work, essentially, of watching movies and giving opinion. We're not practicing, we're not trying to find film elites to review the work. We want it to simply move the people that are out there already caring about and working and advancing the trail sector.
And if you could clarify the website that you mentioned, Goran is asking, was it Film Freeway, Jay?
Correct.
Yeah.
Filmfreeway.com. I can share our link to that.
Okay, perfect.
And Jay, what's the predominantly Spanish language platform that we just profiled?
It's not predominantly, but there's another website called Fest Home that this year I've cross-posted us there so that we can hopefully be able to attract more filmmakers in other parts of the world, because that is one of our main priorities, is to continually reach beyond just the American or European markets. And so I'm diversifying what websites we list on and looking to tap other communities to be able to get the films that aren't already landing on our desk. I'm trying to go out and find them.
Allegra has a follow-up question. What if you want to add local films or filmmakers? Does that create problems?
I think if you're hosting an event for yourself and you want to be able to add a local film, that's fine for us. We can discuss more what that would look like off those specifics, but this is not something that we close the door and say this is the only content that can be played. It's more likely I'll be asking, please send us the contact details of your filmmakers. We'd love to see their next work.
And Jennifer is asking, who keeps the admission fee?
I can take that. It depends is the answer. It depends on whether you're charging an admission fee, what that admission fee represents to your overall costs. Our intent in how we've structured our pricing, it might be helpful to hear, if you're a nonprofit organization, it's tracking somewhere between $4 and $6 like per seat, per ticket that's kind of like our hard costs. So the margin from there to an average ticket price of $12 to $15 is available to the hosting organization, so that this is a net positive event for you, or it's available by your choosing toward simply the cause, the trail stewarding organization, who you may not be in this case, but you wish for your funds to go toward. So there's some options and some just like specifics and scaling that matters to answer that question. But those are some examples and some basics about how it can work.
Great. And I know, Jane, that's what I mentioned. I know you're still on. I'm going to share your question and comments with the presenters, and I will share that in my follow-up email with them. So they'll definitely be in touch to talk more with you on your questions. And then Kat, we'll just end here with Kat, asking if you're planning a festival in Rio, they would like to help promote there, reach filmmakers. Their son works with Guarini and other tribal groups there. So.
What a fabulous invite. Thank you.
Yeah, please email us at info@trailsfilm. We are in the planning stages for events in Niterói, which is near Rio de Janeiro, as the Brazilian Trail Congress that's coming up in September. So that is kind of where our planning direction is, hopefully aiming for the next global festival.
Great. And I'll ask one more question from Jay Howard. Actually, he's on our planning committee for the International Trail Summit, and he's helping to host the North America premiere with the Truckee. A part of the proceeds are going to the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, a local nonprofit in the Reno area. And so just to be clear, Trails Film is looking for communities in which to conduct annual premieres. So for example, to build on the Reno premiere in April, this might become a rotating or annual event, or it could be.
Yeah, we're excited to allow folks to parse out a designation of a premiere that fits for their region and for their work. So by saying that, I mean, we have a global premiere that we expect to occur around Labor Day, around September each year, that will feature the new content. But similar, like, so we just did that in September, and then as we move through this year, there's opportunity for North American premiere, for a premiere in a certain state or province, for a premiere of Trails film in your country. So we are excited to do sort of the custom messaging and design that would come along with that, if that's the sort of cachet that an organization that's willing to host is interested in.
And I know we need to wrap, and I would just add, it is a bit to match the aspirations. We'll be running out a celebrity showroom in April. It's going to be a big event. I'm really looking forward to it. Not every organization is ready to do that. So for events that are looking to be in a smaller on-tour screening, that is absolutely fine. It really is a conversation. Like we said, it starts with an inquiry after you do some initial brainstorming. And we can identify the goals of these events as they move forward and kind of get a sense of the scale.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jay and Zach. I really appreciate it. The slide that you all see here, I will be sharing in my follow-up email. I'm going to add many more links that were presented during the webinar, including the video that they shared in my follow-up email within 2 days. And if you missed getting their emails on the questions slide, their names are linked to their emails. So you will get that information in my follow-up email. So thank you again to Jay and Zach. Really appreciate your time in doing this. And I also want to thank our partners of the webinar that include the Bureau of Land Management, the Federal Highway Administration, the U.S. Forest Service, as well as the National Park Service. And if you are enjoying our webinars, please consider donating as little as $5 by texting "I'm for Trails" to 44321. Your donation will go to the Trail Capacity Fund, which is a grant program of American Trails, and we hope for our next round of applications to be available this fall. So please stay tuned. And as noted on the slide, I will select a couple people who donated immediately following the webinar to receive our Trail Boss mug as a thank you. And we hope you'll be able to join us for these upcoming webinars noted on my slide. They are free. And then we also invite you to join us in Reno again for the International Trail Summit in April, where we're partnering with the Professional Trail Builders Association. And attendees will get a taste of the Film Festival with free admission. And Jay and Zach will be there, to answer your questions and also doing a presentation too. So you can talk more in depth with them if you're going to join us. So thank you again to everyone for attending. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and happy trails.